Let's talk supply chain. So welcome to the show, TJ.
Hey, thanks, Sarah. Happy to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. I mean, we'll talk about it a little later, but you are a 2023 Supply and Demand Chain Executive Woman in Supply Chain Award winner. So congratulations. I'm working
Thank
with them
you.
this year, and I'm absolutely loving having the opportunity to meet so many inspiring women, to hear their stories, because they're all just so fascinating. And your story is absolutely no exception. So I'm really looking forward to sharing it with our listeners today. So I want to take it back to the beginning because you have a degree in business and marketing, but you
Yeah.
then pursued a master's in mathematics for teaching, and you did go on to become a teacher. So what did those early years look like for you?
So I did my undergrad in Colorado, and then I got my master's out in Boston, and I decided I loved Colorado enough that I went back to Colorado to do my teaching career. And because of what my degree was in and how high up I went in my content level, I guess you could say. I was in a high demand position as a math teacher. So I taught things like AP statistics, AP calculus, as opposed to just straight algebra one. So I've taught everything from like rudimentary algebra all the way up to, and I taught at the college level as well, both at colleges, and then I was in demand at high schools because I could offer high school students that were of high caliber college credit while sitting in a high
Okay,
school classroom.
cool.
So I taught in three different school districts total, at three different high schools, and loved all of that. I taught at a couple of different community colleges, loved that as well. The kids that are 14 and above are definitely my jam.
Okay.
Um, I love my two little boys. They're 5 and 7, but I cannot wait until they turn 14. Um,
You got a long
that
way to go,
teenage,
Missy.
yeah, that teenage age is definitely my jam. And early years, I mean, it was a lot of floundering. Had a sort of a unique path. I've been a startup gal literally my entire life. So even as a teacher, I sort of had this startup mentality. So I got a degree, but I didn't have a degree in education.
Okay.
My master's is in math for teaching, but it wasn't technically a 4 year ed
Right.
degree. So I had what was called an alternative license. And so during my first year, so I never was a student teacher. I went
Mm,
straight from the classroom to a classroom with
wow.
students in it, having never been in front of students before. And with my alternative license, then that whole first year, I took coursework with the district to get things like how to use a grade book, English as a
Right.
second language, all of those things you get as part of an ed degree. I did those in the evenings and on the weekends, to finish out my actual full license, for my second
Wow.
year of teaching. But it was really fun because, like, my first year of teaching, I taught everything from low level math up to AP stats. And my AP stats class, I was at a very, very tiny high school, in a school district where it was a high school, a middle school, and an elementary, and there was no post office or grocery store at that school, or
Wow.
like in that area.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So my last class of the day was 5 senior boys on the baseball team in AP stats. And I basically turned an entire AP stats curriculum into a baseball curriculum. And like, because none of them
Cool.
actually wanted to take the test. So they just were like, I just want to take a math class for math credit. And so we just totally pivoted. And it was at the caliber of AP, but it was so fun because I got to
That's
basically like
awesome.
rewrite the AP curriculum. It's cool.
Yeah, that is cool. And as a
Yeah.
fan of baseball, I mean,
Yeah.
I think if math had been taught that way when I went to school, I probably would have done better.
Right.
Better.
Right.
Because for me, I was in French immersion, and
Oh, yep.
so I learned everything in French, like math and science. And by grade 10, they turned it into English. And so
Right.
I went into grade 10 math or grade 11 math, and I had no idea what they were talking about because it was in English.
Oh
And so
my
it
gosh.
totally ruined my math career. I mean, who
It's
knows?
literally like learning a language on top of a language. That's crazy.
I know. So who knows? I could have been better at math for the rest of my
Yeah.
life. Probably not.
Yeah.
All right. You were a teacher for the 5 years, right? Which is what you just talked about. What did you learn? Because I talk all the time about transferable skills. Are
Yeah.
there transferable skills from teaching young people to working with supply chain professionals?
Oh, for sure. And I get this question a lot because people are like, wait a minute, you taught calculus and now you
Right.
do this? I don't understand. Like, how does that say?
I mean,
Yeah,
there's a
right.
lot of math in supply chain, so I can see that
Yeah.
correlation.
But we have computers, right, that do a
That's
lot
true.
of that.
Hmm.
And so like I would say probably like four big things that I took away. One, obviously my skill for organization. You have to be organized as a teacher,
Hmm.
especially today. Like kids are
Yeah.
holding teachers super accountable. Parents are holding teachers super accountable. We have to document everything that we do. That is an absolutely critical piece of being in supply chain, right? Documentation of every
Yep.
single step and facet of a process,
Hmm.
both before, during, and after, iterating and learning, making sure that we're observing the process and continuing to document changes,
Hmm.
or proposals of changes, and then subsequent decisions based on those
Right.
proposals, right? Second thing would be backwards planning, just being able to evaluate, okay, what am I trying to accomplish here?
Hmm.
Let's start at the goal. Like, what is the goal? And
Yeah.
how do I work backwards from that? Where do I need to start to be able to achieve that goal
Hmm.
most concretely and also most efficiently?
Right.
Which is a huge piece of working in the classroom today. Is just being able to assess, well, I've got 28 kids, I have to get to this finish line. How do I do that? Right. And that kind of is a segue into my third point, which is knowing your environment or knowing your audience. Um, in the classroom, being able to assess a full group of kids, and this probably is more true at the lower level math than it is the high level math, but being able to assess that full group of kids and going, okay, I've got kids over here on this end of the spectrum, but I also have this kid over here on the end of this end of the spectrum.
Right.
My job as director of operations at IPPS is really cool and very unique that I get to interact daily with warehouse workers, right?
Right.
And that are our absolute front lines and they are our key observers. They give me the most information I get for my
Hmm.
job on a daily basis, but I also on a weekly to monthly basis am interacting with CEOs
Right.
and top brass at various relationships that we have. And so being able to pivot between those two types of personalities and abilities and knowledge
Right.
is a key skill. And then last but not least is your ability to manage like customer service concerns,
Okay.
which in
Yep.
in the classroom it means managing parents,
Yeah.
right? Parents are your
That's true.
customer ultimately at the end of the day, and being able to do that gracefully, kindly, but also informatively,
Hmm.
and to make sure that we're not just like making the thing go away, but we're actually listening, internalizing, assessing, and then deciding, do we actually need to take action on this
Right.
concern or not?
Right. Those are
Um,
amazing transferable skills. And I'm glad that you shared that with us because, to be honest with you, a lot of us, you know, leave for whatever reasons and then we come back or we come into supply chain from various other industries and we don't necessarily take the time to think about, well, what did I learn over here that can really
yeah.
transfer into the career or the job that I want to have in supply chain? And also, I think the more critical part is how do I communicate that? And so
Mhm.
you really, just in a few short sentences was able to show us how to communicate that. Now you made the decision to leave teaching. I mean, I personally know a few people who have chosen to leave the profession, but what drove that decision for you and how did you end up as logistics director? Because that's quite a pivot. And let me tell you, I mean, as a teacher, you would have had a certain amount of time off and then you're probably
Yeah.
gonna go to logistics director and they're like, "Nope, you only get
Yeah.
this much time off." So,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah. Well, I stayed home for 3 years with my boys in between.
Got it. Okay.
I should say in between my paying jobs.
Okay.
During that time, I was helping run a CrossFit gym that I had started with another guy about, I don't know, 8 or 7 years before that. My
Okay.
timelines, they're a little off probably, but
Yeah.
I worked the whole time, probably maybe 15, 20 hours a week running at the CrossFit gym. Um, and then additionally, during that time, I was bored raising babies and working at the CrossFit gym. So I self-studied and passed the first three actuarial exams during that time, which a lot of people don't know what that is, but it's sort of like if you took the MCAS or like the bar exam and you split it up into chunks. That's how the
Uh-huh.
actuarial exams are. So there's like
Okay.
7 to 10, depending on the course track that you take. So I made it about halfway through that process. And I had a really good time with that. It really stimulated my brain. It got me fired up about potential other pathways to take my skill set and my interest, which is mostly I have a passion for making sure people are educated about what's happening around them.
Okay.
2023 is just absolute peak right now on false data being put out and then used to make decisions. And it makes me crazy because I think if we did a better job, it's part of why I was a teacher, right? I want students to come out of their education knowing how to discern the information in the whirlpool around them,
Right.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so basically, I left education because of salary. I'll be totally honest with you. I got to a place in my life where I was like, my time is worth more than this per hour,
Okay.
essentially.
Yeah.
And COVID and the timing of having my babies when I did, I basically was coming out of wanting to be a stay-at-home mom and wanting to get back into the workforce right as COVID was happening.
Mm.
And that is when all of this remote work started to skyrocket.
Right.
And I think what I bring to the table that might be different than a lot of women trying to come back out of being home with their kids or having never worked before, is that I had the confidence to say, I know what I'm worth. And these are my boundaries. I'm not
Right.
going to accept an interview or apply for a job that clearly isn't going to fall inside my boundaries. And so my boundaries are I have to be able to take my kids to school and pick my kids up from school.
Yeah.
I have to be able to go to baseball with them in the evenings. But what does that mean for me as a side effect? It means I'm answering emails at 8 p.m. And I'm cool with that. Like
Right.
it doesn't bother me at all. And that's on me, not
Right.
on any work culture that we have. I am unbelievably grateful for the work culture that I have. How I got to where I'm at today, the short version is Instagram. I'll be
Okay.
totally honest with you. And maybe if I'm being really honest, a glass of wine. I straight up was scrolling Instagram one night and at the fire pit and applied for a job on Instagram and was like,
Okay.
I think I'll apply for this just for funsies. And then they messaged me and they were like, hey, we'd love to talk to you. And I was the director of logistics, or ended up being the director of logistics. It was for a frozen food company, vegan food company, that was sort of like the Costco of online frozen food, if you will. It was like a
Okay.
warehouse
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
wholesale packaged. And then I took that position after a period of time and segued that into a position at Stored, which might ring a bell for you in logistics.
I have heard of it. Yes.
Yeah, so they're basically a cloud-based supply chain. They're trying to connect
Yep.
all of the dots from order all the way through the transportation piece,
Right.
as well as returns, tech-wise. And so I ran a carrier team over there
Okay.
for their freight side,
Yeah.
and then pretty much quickly figured out that I was looking for a little bit more freedom in the role than I was being given at Stored. The reason I left Budco is because we went through an acquisition and it didn't make sense to stay on that
Okay.
team.
Yeah.
Stored I left because the position was very structured.
Mm-hmm.
I work really well in a position where I'm given the freedom to kind of write
Freedom.
what I'm
Yeah.
doing. I like startup world. I like, oh, we haven't done anything about this yet. Let me problem solve
Right.
this. Let me make
Yeah.
this happen for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really what I was given here at IPPS. That's how I
Amazing.
landed here. Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. Now, through all of that, do you have like a mentor, or maybe somebody personally or professionally that maybe inspired or helped guide you through some of that transition, or, even help with some of the courses that you took?
Yeah, I do. Her name is Lara Tabola. She's actually just in May retired from like 23 years of teaching calculus.
Okay.
She was a former teacher with me, and while she was a full-time teacher, she also and she has two boys that are like 16 years older than my boys. So we're sort of, it's not a mother-daughter relationship, but it's close. And she actually sat for and passed all the same actuarial exams as I did, more for fun than anything else.
Wow.
But she's absolutely been a sounding board for me through all of this because she is looking forward to, now that she's retired, getting into the professional workspace that isn't education.
Huh. Cool.
Different purposes than me. I think she's looking to stay occupied in
Right.
retirement as
Yeah.
opposed to what I'm looking for, which is I'm 38, so I got some more years left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now you're currently director of operations for post-purchase solutions at Inmar
Yes.
Intelligence. So if you've heard her say PPS, it means post
Yes.
purchase solutions. So start telling us about Inmar. Like, what do they do? And then secondly, tell me about the culture there, because from what I've read online, they do have a focus on creating an environment that like hopefully leads to happy, healthy, and motivated team members.
Oh yeah. So basically we are a tech-enabled services company. We help brands, retailers, healthcare companies to do more, save more, and basically provide better services to their consumers,
Mhm.
all in this current scenario of changing markets and consumer behavior. It's an incredibly inclusive culture. I felt immediately at home. Even though I'm not at home, or I'm at my home, I'm not at our HQ. I think it was like maybe 2 months in, I went out to the HQ and got to walk around. They had actually just totally redone their office. Everyone was like, "Oh, it's so nice to meet you." It was a very immediate feeling of welcome, even though I'm
Awesome.
fully remote.
Right.
I would say that Inmar has been it was really attractive for me in the interview process in terms of the availability to further education via either internal or external resources. There's all kinds of tuition assistance and other programs available to further
Awesome.
yourself, specifically in supply chain,
Mhm.
because that's really where Inmar's bread and butter is. There's a bunch of affinity groups where you can connect with other team members on areas that like inside and outside of work that are of interest.
Yeah.
We have a band, like I'm in our
Oh,
band, like
okay.
um so yeah, I've really enjoyed being under the umbrella of Inmar Intelligence in general, and then specifically our little IPPS team is
So next
so
you're
fun.
gonna take like guitar lessons or drum
Yeah.
lessons, and then you're gonna be part of the band, right?
Exactly,
Is that like
exactly.
your next goal that you're gonna achieve? Let us in.
That would be fun. That would be fun.
I can totally see you doing that. Now, you've mentioned a couple times you're a mom. So, how important is that culture to you? Because I think the conversations around working mothers have become really interesting over the last few years, right? We've gone from this blanket women can have it all statement to actually no one can just simply have it all. We need to think, what are the practicalities of actually bringing parenthood and a successful career together? What's the balance? Where do we compromise? What has that looked like for you?
Yeah. So if somebody asked me like what my identity is, I would say in this order, I'm a child of God first. I am a wife second. I am a mom third. And I am IPPS fourth. And one of the most amazing things about working for Inmar is that they honor all three of those things that happen ahead of them. And they get that if they give that space,
Mhm.
that what they get from me as an employee of IPPS is so much greater.
Right.
Um, I love being a mom. It is sometimes I have to knock that back down to step three and not be number one. I am very, very famous for bragging my boys up. They both do several sports. They're both wicked smart. I mean, just they ask the coolest questions. My son, actually, my 7-year-old son, has helped me UAT test some of our like apps that we've developed for our warehouse handhelds.
Wow.
And I'll like go park him in another bedroom and then run testing with him back and forth. So that has been super fun because my kids actually get to see what I do. It's a
Yeah.
perk of remote work
Mhm.
that is not true for people who work in an office. Um, I'll be totally honest, that was one of my boundaries was I'm a mom. I have to be able to take calls from the car line. You can't require that I'm sitting in this space all
Right.
of the time.
Right.
And my husband and I share those duties. So it's really nice to be in a partnership um, where we both of our jobs allow for that. But I love the freedom of workspace. I love the ability to flex my day as needed if I have to take my kids to a doctor's appointment. But more importantly, I am really, really enjoying my boys getting to see me work and
Right.
not just being at home with them.
Right.
So
Yeah. Well, and how do you find balance between all of that? Like, what's self-care to you?
we actually I'll be totally honest with you.
Yeah.
I was a former CrossFit coach, so I'm all about what's healthy. And I actually just had full back surgery about a year ago, a little over a year ago. I had an
Okay.
implant put in my back.
Wow.
So self-care is big topic around here. So everything that is like not super feminine, but very physical. So like we have a really bougie shower now, and I have a really pretty phenomenal bathtub set up in my bathroom. So basically we just built this house. So basically my bathroom setup is like mommy's sanctuary. And
Okay.
my kids know that, okay, when mommy's bathroom doors are closed, she's going to go in, she's going to do a little steam, she's going to hang out in the bathtub, have a little chillax hour. And I work really hard to make sure that I plan that time. I put it on my calendar so my husband can see, oh, this is going to be a night where she's
Okay.
just going to take an hour.
Right.
And we use a shared calendar system that's color coded so that it's very easy to communicate. That was an absolute clutch thing that we did about 2 or 3 years ago. For
Sounds
anybody
so good.
listening, let me tell you about the shared calendar situation. We use Cozy because it color codes by kid, and you don't have to
Okay.
have like an account per kid, but it's slimmed down the quick phone calls in the middle of the day quite a bit.
Right. Hmm. What are we doing tonight? What's for
Yep.
dinner? Where do I have to
Mm-hmm.
be? Where are you gonna be? What time are you gonna be home?
This is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm.
I love that. And thank you for sharing, some of your personal ways to be able to keep that balance because
Yeah.
I think balance looks different for everybody, right? Everybody
Oh
has
yeah.
different life circumstances. And, some say balance is not possible, right? Like sometimes
Yeah.
80% goes over here and 20% over here. And I think when we use the word balance, everybody thinks like 50-50, but it's not
Oh
always
yeah.
going to be
No.
50-50, right? I think the balance
No.
is what you choose it to be in what it
Mm-hmm.
looks like and works for you.
Well, and for example, right, like this week, I'm launching two facilities, and my boss is going to launch the third one. And so it's going to be some travel this week. And it's some
Right.
travel right on the piggyback of some travel about a week and a
Right.
half ago, all that was pretty high stress level travel.
Yeah.
And so I have Friday already marked. I'm not working on Friday.
Right.
And be like it's interesting. Plus, I will tell you, I work with a lot of British humans,
Okay.
and the British culture for vacation just looks different than we have here in the US. They don't even think twice to be like, oh, I need a day off.
Right.
We in the US, women especially, because your job as a mom is never over. There's no days off as a mom, right?
Right.
And so we tend to carry that over into our work life and
Hmm.
assume that, well, I can't take a day off. There's work to do. And it's like
Right.
you can actually do that for yourself. And
Hmm.
when you do and you actively choose to turn off and use that day for something that's not work related, man, it feels so good when you come back to work.
I and I am the worst at that. Like I'll
Same,
come back
same.
from a trip and then go straight into work on the Monday and then I don't
Mm-hmm,
have any reprieve until the weekend. So I
mm-hmm,
need to take a page from you at this point.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I want to talk to you about sustainability. A lot of organizations and even whole countries aren't really on track to meet some of the ambitious ESG goals. What do you think about sustainability when you think about your career, when you think about the company that you work for, when you think about your kids, right? Talk to us about what sustainability kind of means for you, what you're doing both personally and professionally to really contribute or make at least a small impact on a daily basis.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I live in Conroe, Texas, right?
Okay.
So sustainability is not high,
Hmm.
not high on the radar here, where I live in one of the most conservative counties in in the country. But I'm from Colorado, or spent the last 15 years in
And
Colorado,
they are.
and they are.
They are.
And so it was a very big culture shock for us to come here because in general, I don't consider myself a pretty like outwardly crunchy granola human, but I'm
Right.
real crunchy down here.
Okay. All
Real
right.
crunchy. I mean, we've been using reusable bags for a decade. Like, I haven't taken grocery bags home for a decade, right? I've been using stasher bags for 5 years, and we have glass Tupperware, not plastic Tupperware. And to be clear, I'm from the Midwest. Originally, I'm from Chicago. I have done my fair share of country crock containers in the
Right.
fridge, right? Like, my mom had like 7 in the fridge at any one time. You had to figure out
Right.
which one was the actual country crock.
Right.
And so like coming off of that, we just do our best around here to really minimize the amount of plastic. That's a big one at our
Mhm.
house is, do we need this extra plastic? Every single one of the members of my family has a water bottle. And we
Yeah.
don't have multiples. Like
Right.
that's the one. And then you just wash it. Um, as for work, returns by their nature are not great for
Mhm.
the environment, right?
Right.
But what we're doing at IPPS, our end-to-end post-purchase solutions, we're trying to mitigate the impact that returns have on our environment.
Okay.
So we're trying to piggyback on existing transit lines, right? And allow returns to ride consolidated instead of single package. If you figure when you look at like Amazon, for example, right?
Yeah.
Those returns, if every single purchase that gets returned is going back in an additional new package because you didn't keep the box it came in or
Right.
the package that it came in. When you take that to UPS or you take it to Whole Foods or you take it to Kohl's to drop it off, they're producing another amount of packaging, right?
Right.
So what we're aiming to do at IPPS is to utilize any and all reused options that we
Okay.
can. And in an
Awesome.
ideal world, that's plastic free. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
But that's on my heart, like big time to go as plastic free as possible in the next
So
decade.
I'm gonna say something that I think is gonna shock quite a few people. I read this newsletter called The Hustle, and it's a daily
Okay.
newsletter. And one of the snippets that they had in their newsletter just the other day was talking about Lego. I'm gonna see if I can find it because Lego is actually moving away from plastic, which is what they
Mm-hmm.
came out with originally to say that they were going to do to help the environment. Here it is. So it says Lego won't be making bricks from recycled plastic bottles after all. The company, which pledged to use only sustainable materials by 2032, said the manufacturing process would actually cause more pollution than its traditional oil based bricks. So, with you talking about plastic and like looking at different alternatives and things like that, I thought it was an interesting moment to really bring that into sort of light and the conversation around we're all still learning. So, if
Yep.
you're out there listening to this and you're like, I'm not doing anything yet, just a small little thing of changing
Yep.
routines can really make a huge impact, and we're all still learning. And so the fact that your organization, you're trying different things, trying to figure it out, doesn't mean that you have the answer, and it doesn't mean what you put in place today is actually going to make the difference that you might think of in 2 to 3 years. You might have to pivot, but
Yep.
Lego just came out and said that, and I thought that was a really big moment for us all to be like, well, wait a second, the little thing that I can do is really important. And B, nobody really knows what's going to make that impact and what isn't. And we just need to keep trying.
You're so right. And one of the things I love about being on the IPPS team is they've really given me the freedom to allow data and observations to steer our decisions. So one of my
Awesome.
roles as director of operations is I've written our whole dash that tracks all of our data. And I'm able to write it myself so I can decide, oh, I want to track this today because
Hmm.
we had something come up. I want to see how significant is this issue, right? And
Right.
I have access to all of that. I don't have to ask somebody to do it because I happen to have this other bonus skill set and stats, right?
Hmm.
And so I do that, and it's been really critical, I think, for us to have an instant visual on
Yeah.
what's happening, and also an instant visual on what's maybe not happening. Like
Right.
it's real easy to get an inquiry from a relationship that we have and immediately feel the need to react to that inquiry. And so
Yeah.
what I can do for the team is to be able to look into that inquiry and say, this is a one-off. This is not something we actually need to respond to
Hmm.
at global, right?
Right.
Um, and I think that's true of when we're talking about sustainability. It's let's take a second, let's assess where is it coming from, the
Yeah.
change that we're trying to look at,
Hmm.
and what ultimate impact is it going to have, not just fiscally, but
Right.
exactly what you're saying. Is the toxicity of that change positive or
Or
negative or
negative.
net?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm so glad I was able to share that tidbit. I've been
that's
sitting on
so
that for just a
cool.
couple
I
of
got about
days.
1,002 Legos sitting right behind this wall in the playroom.
Yeah. So you won a 2023 Supply and Demand Chain Executive Women in Supply Chain Award. So again, congratulations. And I'm going
Thanks.
to see you at the forum in November. What are you
Oh,
most
great.
looking forward to, and why do you think these awards and events are so important?
I have been working remote for 3 years, and I am most looking forward to hanging out with other women who are doing what I'm doing
Right? I
because
know.
I get a lot, just like you asked me, like, wait, you taught calculus and now you're doing this?
Right.
I'm actually really looking forward to going and being surrounded by peers because up until now, like people that I can hang out with physically are other teachers, right?
Right.
Versus this is going to be a really cool opportunity to hang out with other women that potentially unlikely are doing what I'm doing and
Yeah.
momming at home and still making dinners but they're also rocking a daily professional space. So
Yep. And rocking some lifestyle shoes sometimes instead of those heels, those damn heels at
yes,
conferences, right?
that was a big adjustment. It's funny. My sister is in-house counsel at FedEx Ground and she's a
Yeah.
lawyer. So I, even she wears jeans, like jeans are business casual now. This was a
Yep.
big adjustment for me. Like when
That's a
I
big one
came
for,
back
yeah.
into the professional space, I was like, y'all are wearing jeans. I'm the most dressed up person here. What is going on? And I think I've finally accepted like, okay, I can wear jeans and not feel underdressed. It
Right.
took a
I know.
while though.
It took a while. I mean, I have Nike Air Force Ones, but they're Let's Talk Supply
Nice.
Chain. So I tend to wear those and everybody seems to be okay with that. So
That's awesome.
and as the next generation of women look to some of the awards and the events and they see the impact, they're making, you're making, what advice do you have for them and why should they pursue a career in supply chain?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think supply chain is such an easy space for women to walk into
Mhm,
because it's so logical. And women they're such problem solvers of
mhm.
systems, right? Women look at, oh, this is the agenda for the day. Okay, this is the order in which things have to happen so that
Right.
kids get fed. Like, and I'm being a little sexist here, right? But like that's literally what moms do is we
Mhm.
problem solve systems and organization. And that is literally what supply chain is. It's taking a process from start to finish accurately, efficiently, and comprehensively,
Yeah.
right? So I think my biggest observation coming in is we need more confident women. We
Yeah.
need more women that come in that are like, no, I belong here. I can
Mhm.
do this
And these are my
because,
boundaries
and these are my boundaries.
and my worth.
100%.
Yeah.
And being able to confidently state those boundaries. We've got members on our team. I'm a big believer in love languages. So we've
Mhm.
got members on our team that one of the boundaries, we've found is like communicating your love language up front. And I think your professional love language is sometimes different, hopefully, than your at-home love language, right?
Well,
But depends on the person. Like I'm a big words of affirmation person.
right.
So communicating that with my superiors and also with those underneath me was really helpful because it tells those underneath me, hey, I'm a words of affirmation person. So you're gonna get attaboys and attagirls from me like
Right.
all the time,
All the
right?
time.
Like
Yeah.
I am a coach all the way down to my bones.
Right.
And so that's going to be my leadership style, unless that doesn't work for you, in which case tell me
Yeah.
so that we can work with that, right?
Yeah.
And
And we
then
can adjust.
obviously same holds true for
Yeah.
communicating with my superior.
Yeah.
So I think
I like that.
confidence to be able to be yourself,
Mhm.
and that's hard from behind a camera. It's hard from remote work.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more of a disconnect. And so I would encourage any woman, especially if they work remote right now in supply chain, to be confident and willing to speak up for themselves and say what
Awesome.
they need, what they're looking for from the role, and what's working for them. Tell your team what is working for you,
Yeah.
because most of the time they're gonna feed into that.
Amazing. That's such amazing advice. So finally, I can't believe we're at the end of this conversation. I think you and I could talk for a very, very long time. What's next in your journey? Like, what are you looking forward to? What can we, watch for?
Oh, well, I've got two little boys that play baseball. So what's
Nice.
next in my journey is apparently a lot of weekends sitting my
Uh-huh.
butt in a chair.
Yep.
Work wise, what's next? We are scaling this returns network massively over the next year. This coming year
Cool.
is going to be pretty big for us. We're adding drop off locations. We're already nationwide. We're adding partner after partner in terms of volume coming into the network. And I think what would be next for me is to really start honing in on the sustainability of that as we get volume to be able to really have weight into our decisions. I
Mhm.
am looking forward to starting to use data to drive some sustainability decisions on the front end that's visible to the consumer. So,
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I can't wait and I can't wait to watch what you do and also, meet you in person. And now TJ is just another wonderful example of following your heart, of embracing the journey wherever it might lead and really taking chances. It takes commitment, it takes hard work, but you can live the life you want. You can be a mom, you can have a successful career, you can change careers if you want to. And as women, we have a world of endless possibilities in front of us if we make the effort to grasp them. So, did you have a guess at today's big question? Well, at the top of the show, I asked you, according to the National Retail Federation, how much did returns cost retailers in 2022? Well, returns cost retailers a huge $816 billion in 2022, nearly double the cost of returns in 2020. Wow. And just imagine the environmental impact on top of that. TJ, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us. It's been a pleasure to talk to you and just feature your journey and really, hone in on the advice that you have for the next generation. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.